Is this recording? Yes. Hello bookworms, Andrea here again. I hope you've been having amazing reads, and I'm here today again not for a book review, but for more book award news. Today's video will be a two-parter. We will be talking about the Goodreads Choice Awards for science fiction, and then we're actually going to talk about the winners of the Goodreads Choice Awards because they've been announced and you've probably heard already who they are, but we'll talk about that later. Now, for those that don't know what the Goodreads Choice Awards are, I've made a video already talking about the fantasy nominees. Go check it out, that's the thumbnail here. But basically, these awards are an annual celebration of the best or most popular books that came out between Decembers pretty much of the previous year and the current year that the awards are released. And the nominations are made through the Goodreads community. The winner is also the most voted book by the Goodreads community. They have many categories like horror, science fiction, fantasy, romantasy, which is a new category this year, fiction, non-fiction, many more. But today we'll be focusing on the science fiction nominees, the finalists, the 10 finalists that made it to that round. Are you ready? Let's go and dive right into it. The first nominee we have is by Martha Wells and it's called Systems Collapse. This is the 7th book of a famous series called The Murderbot Diaries. I've heard many things about this book. I personally haven't read any of the books in this series, but I've definitely been curious to read it because I've only heard good things. I know that it's a fast-paced series, it's funny at parts, and I know that it's also have those moments where it makes you think about what's happening and reflect upon it, which what every great science fiction book makes you do. Now, considering this is the 7th book of the series, I'm not going to talk much about it because there will be probably a lot of spoilers, and I also don't want to know more about it in case I decide to read it. But what I know more or less, and this is pretty much the premise you get from the first book, is that we follow a murder bot in his search to try and understand the universe and itself. On Goodreads, System Collapse has more than 12,000 ratings at the moment of the release of this video, and it has a score of 4.3, which is quite good considering that it doesn't have that many ratings yet. And considering that the book came out just more than a month ago, that's also quite impressive itself that it gained this many reviews and ratings. But will it be enough to win the award? I'm not exactly sure because the 7th book in the series, it means that it has to carry a lot of fans through to get to that stage, and that just might not be enough votes. But I mean, I'm talking as if I don't know who won. I know, but let's keep this fantasy here for now. Next up we have In the Lives of Puppets by T.J. Klune. This is a standalone book, average size around 400 pages. I don't know much about this book or the author. I only know that the author also wrote The House in the Cerulean Sea, which was a famous book that was very praised as well. From what I could gather, In the Lives of Puppets is another great book that is capable of evoking emotions from the reader while still making it funny and adventurous. We follow a group of 3 robots and a human, all trying to discover a dark past, but they all have different purposes and different views. This book so far has gathered 42,000 ratings, and it came out in April, so it has a lot more time to gather those ratings. And the average score it has is 3.98 out of 5. So close to 4. Our third finalist is The Light Pirate by Lily Brooks Dalton. This is another standalone book. This time we dive into the dystopian side of science fiction in a not too distant future. If you want something that will pull your heartstrings, this might be your choice, because with just over 300 pages, this book is considered extremely emotional and sad at times. As we follow the characters witnessing a Florida being destroyed by catastrophic events, and all due to weather changing and climate change and things like that. I haven't read anything from this author, but then again, this book got me very curious and it might be going into my TBR just as I finish this. This might also be the oldest book in this list of finalists because it came out December of 2022, so just at the start of the period where books can be nominated. It has gathered 22,000 ratings and it averages on 4.06 out of 5. So far, the scores have been quite close to each other, so it might be a tight battle if we go by the scores. Our next finalist is Starter Villain by the famous John Scalzi. We all know John Scalzi. I've spoken about him previously in another recommendation video, and of course many people have heard of his most famous series, Old Man's War. Starter Villain is another standalone book of his, and by the sounds of it, it looks like a humorous, fun entry for these awards. In this book we follow Charlie, a substitute teacher that inherits his uncle's supervillain business. What an idea. I'm definitely curious to see what makes this book a science fiction book and not a fantasy book, but I'm sure it has some science fiction into it at some point. This book, with over 16,000 ratings, is able to gather a score of 4.25 out of 5. Next up, we have the only book that I've read out of this list, and that is Children of Memory by Adrian Tchaikovsky, which I actually have the book here. This book was published in January this year, and it is not a standalone book. This is the third of a trilogy or series. I'm not sure, because I thought initially it was a duology, but then the author came up with this third book, so maybe there will be more than 3. Who knows? I must say I enjoyed this book quite a bit. I've enjoyed this book quite a bit, although I have many mixed feelings about it. And it's not really once I ended it, it was more throughout my reading experience. There was a lot of different feelings happening. But I'm not here to give a review of this book. If you want that, just comment down below and I'm more than happy to make a review of the whole trilogy. We're talking about this book as the finalist. This book is more on the chunky side. It's close to 500 pages and is within the space opera subgenre of science fiction. And I can guarantee you that it's filled with mystery and unanswered questions that will keep you reading until you're able to find out what the hell is happening. My personal rating for this book was a 3.8 out of 5, but on Goodreads, this book has more than 13,000 ratings and it averages on 4. So it hasn't a higher score than what I gave, which I completely understand because I can see why people would enjoy this book, even though there were some parts that were, again, mixed feelings for me. And we've already reached halfway of the finalists. Do you think the winner will be in the first half or in the second half? Comment down below and then see what happens at the end of the video. Next on our list we have The Marriage Act by John Mars. This book was also published in January this year, just like Children of Memory, but this book brings us back into the dystopian thriller subgenre of science fiction. This book happens in the near future, this time in Britain, where marriages are mandatory and single people are punished for being single. This is another standalone book, I forgot to mention that, and from the reader's perspectives, it is a dark and tense novel, so don't expect a starter villain by John Scalzi when reading this book. In my opinion, I think it's definitely thought-provoking and I might grab it in the future. For now, this book has more than 12,000 ratings and an average score of 3.87, which is one of the lowest so far, and I wonder why it only has that score. Which, I mean, there's nothing bad with 3.87. I think it's quite a positive score, but in Goodreads terms, sometimes below 4 doesn't mean that it's very good. But who knows, I gotta read. The next finalist is one that is famous, very famous amongst the booktube community, and that is Lightbringer by Pierce Brown. This is not a standalone book. In fact, this is the 6th book of a saga called The Red Rising Saga. It's a dystopian space opera with an emotional and adventurous journey and explores the themes of hope, friendship, redemption, amongst many others. I haven't read it. I've heard, again, lots of things because of the booktube community, and maybe in the future I'll pick it up. For now, I'm still awaiting. I know that characters are a very strong point for this whole series, not only this book. So if that's one of your things, characters, then this is probably a good book for you to pick up. This book came out in July this year. It has over 23,000 ratings and it has the best score so far, which is 4.75 out of 5. This is probably one of the best scores I've seen on Goodreads. That's crazy high. And with less than 1% of 1-star ratings, that's so good. Will it be enough to win the award? That is an important question to ask. Our third last finalist is The Ferryman by Justin Cronin. It's another standalone book, again in the dystopian science fiction subgenre. It seems like there's a lot of dystopian novels coming out this year, which kind of reflects how we're seeing the world and how the world is looking more dystopian. But Yeah. This is a tense, mysterious adventure that takes us to a place where people live very happily, very healthily until they reach less than 10% health or well-being, and then they're taken to an island where they're repaired and refreshed and allowed to come back to that initial place. This is another chunky book with more than 500 pages. It came out in May this year. It has over 21,000 ratings and a score of 3.95 out of 5. And this makes me wonder, do darker books tend to have lower scores because people go thinking that it's an okay book and then get a bit depressed? I wonder, and that's a thing for another video. Our next finalist is Chain Gang All Stars, and I'm gonna butcher the author's name, so apologies in advance. The author's name is Nana Kwame Adjei-Brenyah. Let's hope I said that right. This book is also nominated for the best debut novel for this year, also on the Goodreads Choice Awards. And this is, surprise surprise, another dystopian standalone novel. This time we follow two top women gladiators that are fighting for their freedom in this prison system. This book might be a good fit for those that want to be thought-provoked about racism, about the prison system, or even the pursuit of freedom. This book was published in May. It has 17,000 ratings and a score of 4.14 out of 5. And last but not least, we have The Future by Naomi Alderman. Naomi Alderman has published many books before. They have won several awards as well. And in this novel, which is, you guessed it right, another dystopian standalone novel, we see a group of friends hatching a plan to overthrow this entity or company or whatever you want to call it. It's a challenging, diverse, and adventurous book that will keep the readers reading and enjoying this adventure till the very end. This book came out in November and unfortunately doesn't have many ratings, only 2,000 ratings, but the score is okay. It has a 3.88 score out of 5. And those were all the finalists for the science fiction section of the Goodreads Choice Awards. Which one do you think will win? If we go by scores, then Lightbringer will defeat everyone because it's winning by a huge amount. But if we go by the number of ratings, and therefore popularity, then the winner might be In the Lives of Puppets by TJ Klune. Before we jump into the next section, comment down below what do you think will win? Which one? Which book? Alright. Have you commented? You ready? Let's go and announce the winners. So alright, this year's winners for the Goodreads Choice Awards for fantasy and science fiction were Hellbent by Leigh Bardugo and In the Lives of Puppets by TJ Klune. So if you still remember my other video about the fantasy section, and if you remember this video, the winners were the ones that had the most ratings out of the 10 finalists. But let's look at the number of votes to give us a bit more insight. Let's start with the science fiction. In the Lives of Puppets got 57,000 votes. And the runner-up, Lightbringer, which was the one with the highest score, got almost 47,000 votes. Which, I mean, it's relatively close to each other, only 10,000 vote difference. But if we look at the fantasy section, Hellbent got almost 76,000 votes. So it's a bit higher than the other finalists in the science fiction section. And the runner-up, Dress of the Emerald Sea, which was also the book with the highest score in all the finalists of the fantasy section, got 58,000 votes. So there is a bigger difference between the first place and the runner-up. And this third one is just for shock value because I was shocked by the difference. But if we go into the romantasy section, Fourth Wing, which was the winner, and it was obviously that was going to be the winner because it's been all over the internet, won with almost 400,000 votes. That's like so many votes. And the runner-up, which was Assistant to the Villain, only got 34,000 votes. So the Fourth Wing had more than 10 times the amount of votes. It's just such a crazy difference. But that's it. The awards have been announced, and what do you think of it? Did your favorite win? Are you going to read any of the finalists, or are you going to win? Or, I mean, you're always winning. Let's admit it. You're always winning by reading. But are you going to read the winners? Comment down below, and don't forget to like. And if you're new, subscribe. Again, like the comment. And I'll be seeing you soon with a book review sometime, alright? Beijos.